At first glance, she didn't look like someone facing serious consequences. Sitting in a courtroom under the sterile glow of fluorescent lights, she leaned back in her chair, arms loosely folded, her expression calm, almost amused. When the judge spoke, she listened, but there was no visible fear, no trembling hands, no anxious glances. Instead, she gave a slight shrug, as if the entire situation were an inconvenience rather than a turning point in her life. To some observers, her demeanor seemed confident. To others, it felt unsettling. This wasn't how someone acted when they were about to face the full weight of the legal system. What no one in that room knew at the time, at least not the public, was that she believed she had already won. In her mind, the most damaging pieces of evidence were gone, deleted, erased, buried somewhere in the digital void where secrets are supposed to disappear forever. She thought she had covered her tracks, and that belief shaped everything about how she carried herself. The case had started quietly months earlier. There were rumors at first, whispers that didn't seem to have enough substance to be taken seriously. But as time passed, those whispers turned into formal complaints. Then came an investigation, and eventually charges were filed. Even then, she didn't panic. Investigators began gathering information: interviews, timelines, digital footprints. The process was slow but methodical. Every detail mattered. Every inconsistency was noted. But when they looked for the most direct form of evidence, messages, communications, anything that could clearly show intent, they came up short. At least that's what it seemed. Because when authorities first examined her devices, they found nothing substantial. Conversations that should have been there were missing. Entire threads of communication had vanished without a trace. It looked clean, too clean. From her perspective, that was confirmation. She had done what needed to be done. Deleted messages, cleared logs, wiped anything that could tie her directly to the accusations. In a world where so much communication happens through phones, it felt like removing the evidence was the same as removing the truth. So when the case moved forward and she found herself in court, she wasn't afraid. She was prepared. On the day of the hearing, the courtroom was filled with quiet tension. The prosecution was ready to present their case, but from the outside, it wasn't clear how strong that case really was. Without direct evidence, everything depended on testimony and interpretation. And testimony can be challenged. That's why she remained composed, even when her name was called, even when she stood before the judge. There was a quiet confidence in her posture, a sense that she understood something others didn't. When questioned, her responses were measured, controlled. At times, she even appeared dismissive, like someone who believed the situation had been exaggerated beyond reason. And then came that moment, the slight laugh, the shrug. It wasn't loud or dramatic, but it was noticeable, a subtle gesture that said, "This isn't as serious as you think." A signal, intentional or not, that she didn't feel cornered. For a brief moment, it seemed like she might walk away from it all. But courtrooms have a way of revealing what people think they've hidden. As the proceedings continued, the prosecution asked for permission to introduce additional evidence. There was a shift in the room. Small, almost imperceptible, but real. The kind of shift that happens when something unexpected is about to unfold. Then it happened. The texts surfaced. Not fragments, not vague references, but actual messages. Clear, direct, and impossible to ignore. Conversations that had supposedly been erased were suddenly back, reconstructed through forensic analysis and digital recovery methods that most people don't fully understand. Because in reality, deletion isn't always destruction. Data lingers, it leaves traces, and in the hands of experts, those traces can be pieced back together with remarkable accuracy. As the messages were read aloud, the atmosphere in the courtroom changed instantly. What had once felt uncertain now felt undeniable. The tone of the case shifted from speculation to clarity, and all eyes turned to her. The confidence that had defined her earlier demeanor began to fade. It didn't disappear all at once. At first, it showed in small ways: a tightened jaw, a slight shift in posture, a glance that lingered a little too long. But as more messages were presented, the weight of the situation became impossible to ignore. These weren't misunderstandings. They weren't taken out of context. They were exactly what they appeared to be, and they told a story she could no longer control. The same courtroom where she had once seemed relaxed now felt suffocating. The same people she had dismissed with a shrug were now witnessing something far more serious unfold in real time. For the first time, the reality of her situation became visible, not just to others, but to her. Cases like this often hinge on a single turning point. This was it. Before the text surfaced, there was room for doubt. Afterward, there was very little. The narrative had shifted, and with it, the trajectory of the entire case. The defense would try to respond, of course. They would question the methods, challenge the interpretation, look for any possible way to weaken the impact of the evidence. That's what defense teams are meant to do. But some things are harder to explain away than others, and these messages were one of them. What makes this story so striking isn't just the evidence itself, it's the contrast between perception and reality. At the beginning, she believed she was in control. She believed that by removing the evidence, she had removed the risk, that the absence of proof would work in her favor. And for a while, it seemed like she might be right. But the truth doesn't always disappear just because it's been hidden. Sometimes it waits. In the end, the courtroom became more than just a place where legal arguments were made. It became a stage where assumptions were tested and illusions were stripped away. The shrug, the laughter, the confidence, all of it meant something different in hindsight. What once looked like control now looked like miscalculation. What once seemed like confidence now felt like denial. This story carries a clear and powerful message. You can't erase the truth simply by deleting the evidence. In a digital world, actions leave traces, sometimes invisible at first, but rarely gone forever. Technology has evolved, and with it, the ability to uncover what people believe they've hidden. But beyond the technical aspect, there's a deeper lesson. Underestimating the consequences of one's actions and overestimating the ability to escape them can lead to a false sense of security. That sense of security can shape behavior, decisions, and ultimately outcomes. The moment she laughed and shrugged in court, she wasn't just reacting to the situation, she was revealing what she believed to be true. That she was safe, that she had gotten away with it. And that belief turned out to be her greatest mistake. Because when the texts surfaced, they didn't just introduce evidence, they exposed reality. And in that moment, everything changed.